So I want to ask you a question. I want you to be brutally honest with yourself about it. How do you perform under pressure? Do you focus or do you panic? People tend to fall into one of those two categories. For me as an investigative journalist and as a television reporter, I have to be very comfortable with deadlines and I have to be very comfortable with public speaking. But I wasn't always that way. When the red light on that camera turns on, though, you figure out pretty quickly how you perform under pressure, whether or not you deliver or you panic. And I think we all have things like this in our life, whether it's walking into a final exam or standing at a free throw line and having to hit that shot in order to force overtime so your team can survive. Or maybe you're walking into that job interview that you've been working so hard to get, or your college admission interview. Whatever it is, we all feel something that squeezes us, that forces us to focus or to fail. And for me, the answer to that question is I focus. I'm able to focus on the moment. And the way I'm able to do that involves three things. They are challenge, compassion, and truth. And I want to share with you how I use those three things in order to channel my ability to focus when I need to perform, because I think it can help anybody. So number one is challenge. Challenge changes you, and change is growth. I'm a big believer that we are all a product of the quality of our questions. That, of course, is something you would expect a journalist to say. But this is more than just a professional philosophy for me. Asking questions is hard. Challenging authority is uncomfortable. Challenging your own authority and your own perspective is especially uncomfortable. Get over that. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. When you become comfortable with what is uncomfortable, you expand your perspective and you invite challenge into your life. The next time you are challenged in a performance, you will have the perspective and the experience in order to excel in that performance. Let me tell you a little bit about how I got there. This is my dad and me. We're singing karaoke. He was one of the first people who made me want to be a journalist. He used to read everything that I wrote when I first started writing for newspapers. He'd ask me questions about the people that I'd interview, the headlines, how I found the story. He wanted to know the backstory, the inside story to my work. He used to tell me that he loved people who asked questions. And when he died suddenly a couple of months before my 21st birthday, it led to a lot of questions. The first question was, how did he die? What happened? And the answer is, to this day, one of the hardest that I've ever got. Suicide. What do you do next? You take care of your family, you plan his funeral, you honor his memory. I tell you that story because of how it shaped and challenged my perspective. After my dad died, asking hard questions wasn't quite as hard, because no question would be as hard as those that I was asking about my dad. Suddenly, speaking publicly wasn't as hard, because no public speaking event was going to be much more difficult than giving my dad's eulogy. Change and challenge will help you grow. Invite it, understand it, value it. The things that made me uncomfortable suddenly became much more comfortable. I routinely ask uncomfortable questions professionally, and then I talk about them publicly. I made this my career, something that initially challenged me. My dad helped me do that. Number two, compassion. I very much believe that compassion is the ability to listen without judgment. When you listen to somebody without judging what they're saying, you can understand challenges that they have faced without having to go through that challenge yourself. I've told you that I'm a big believer in asking questions. When you ask questions of people who you don't necessarily agree with or understand, and you listen with a compassionate ear, you listen without judgment, you can absorb their perspective. I interview a lot of people who have faced challenges in their lives. One of the hallmarks of storytelling is you find a problem and you bring the audience through to the solution. Challenge the story to solution. I look for people whose perspectives I don't necessarily agree with, I don't necessarily understand, because I want to understand how they got there. And one person in particular that I've interviewed over my career sticks with me. This is me in 2006 in Krakow, Poland, outside of Krakow, Poland. I was about 3 months into my professional career as a journalist, and I was in Poland to follow a Holocaust survivor's return to Auschwitz 60 years after her liberation. She lost her entire family to the Nazis when she was 10 years old. I wasn't there to tell that story. I was there to show her forgiving the Nazis. This is not something I understood. I asked her, how could you do that? Aren't you angry? She told me, of course I'm angry. But anger doesn't help me get over my painful past. Staying angry does nothing except to continue to poison me. I got it. Forgiveness was not for the Nazis, it was for her. You have to really listen to people, compassionately, without judgment. You can understand the challenges that they have faced without having to go through them yourself. It expands your perspective and your ability to see what a challenge is when you face it and need to perform. Number 3, I said truth. I've told you a bunch of times now that I really like to ask questions. I like to ask questions because I think they get you to the truth. But the power of questions to me is not in the question itself, it is in the answer. I think that's where the truth lies, and I have some professional experience that I think proves that. Watch. Mr. Williams, are you worried about any criminal charges for your conduct? Sir, Mr. Williams, are you concerned about any criminal charges that you may face because of your conduct?
Thank you, Mitch.
You're not going to take any questions? How does a situation like that happen? Mr. Mayor, don't you think you have an obligation to answer some of these questions? Even when you get a door closed in your face on your camera, you get an answer. People may not like the questions that I ask as a journalist or other journalists ask, and I get that. That's fine. It's okay. But I don't think that they don't like the questions. I think they don't like the answers. I know that's how it works for me. I have this group of friends. There are 6 other guys who are like my brothers, and 3 of us lost our dads before our 21st birthdays, all within about 18 months of each other. That shared experience made me face the truth that losing my dad does not make me special, it doesn't make me unique, and it is not an excuse. How I handled the experience certainly would shape me, but that's the kind of honest truth and hard truth that is helpful in understanding the challenges that you face. There are a couple of ways that you can get to challenge. Be really honest with yourself and be compassionate with others and seek them out. I'm a big believer that seeking out challenges is a really important thing to do, especially when you're young. Challenges are going to find you, but if you look for things that have challenged other people, how they faced it, how they dealt with it, how they overcame it, you will be able to absorb that, and when you need to perform and you need to deliver, you will have perspective that has contributed to your confidence. I would suggest seeking out challenges, settling for nothing less than the truth, being compassionate with people. It will expand your focus and it will expand your perspective. And when you need to find focus and you need to deliver in a moment that really matters, you'll be able to find that. Thank you.